Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditative practice that engages creativity and mindfulness through the act of drawing. This week I'm on the tail end of a little bit of a head cold, so bear with me. We'll do a quicker intro here and then get right into the exercise. Hopefully the sound comes through okay, and you can follow along as we explore a theme of reflection. Extending out from the trip recently up to Lake George, there was a nice still pond reflecting the shoreline, the trees in the background, the sky above. And while we're not going to try to recreate that, the idea of this edge where reflection happens, some dividing line between two worlds, visually similar but different, distorted, will be our guidance. We'll work with both hands, if you're comfortable with that, starting with your primary hand that may be more adept at making a curve or a line, and then trying to track that with our offhand, letting the inconsistencies be part of that non-perfect reflection that we see there in the natural environment. Two things similar but different. Working with both sides of the body, with both hands, even if it's a little uncomfortable, give it a try for a while. Will help wake up the mind, get both hemispheres activated, hopefully open us to new possibilities. And as we get further into the exercise, you can switch back to your primary hand to let that new awakened creativity flow through it out onto the page and see where it might take you in the exploration of reflection. So with that, let's go ahead and gather your pen or pencil, a pad of paper, sketchbook, or anything you'd like to draw with, and let's draw together. We'd take our theme for the meditation as reflection, something like the surface of a lake or frozen pond, giving us a place to start and seeing where that expands out to, but also a chance for some internal reflection on our physical interface to expression here. Probably drawing back and forth a little between either hand if you're comfortable with that, seeing how they respond to each other. To warm that up a bit, we'll just start by having a line, take a little journey across the page. I'm drawing with my right hand, which is my primary hand, and letting it be a little bumpy or straight, whichever it is. After that first journey, switching hands and trying to recreate it a little bit with the other hand in a mirrored fashion, reflecting to the other side. There'll be some variance, some jumpiness. We'll do this continuously through the exercise, maybe building up some relationship between the lines on each side. Could work forward and back, or in the same direction. Using the warm-up here to get a sense for that. So if I'm going left to right with my right hand, can I also go left to right with my left hand? And that might cause, quite a bit of wobble and deviation or an awkward pushing of the pen or pencil. So we can also perhaps go left to right with the right hand and right to left, the left hand, mirroring and reflecting in two ways, slowly developing that. But if it gets tiresome or challenging or uncomfortable using the offhand, you can always switch back and just use whichever one works for you. On the larger paper, this becomes both easier and more challenging as we have more room to move, but the speed changes and the precision becomes something we have to work with. In my opening mind of the drawing, I see the gently curved edge of a pond or lake, water still and reflecting. And so whatever comes to your mind on the page, that first line, a little soft, a little wobbling, but just reaching out across that page or territory, establishing the first division between a space below and a space above, a line of reflection. And that one, as the initial establishment, sets a bit of the tone for the figures close in. I think I'll draw another line above it before switching hands to have something to reflect around, and this line becoming the primary center of reflection. In this case, now that I have something established, taking a breath in to fill out some space and letting it out before drawing another line. On the next inhalation, finding the beginning, and as the breath moves out, just working along. Probably take several cycles of breath in drawing the curve, depending on the size of the paper and the speed that you move. And that's okay. And switching hands, taking a chance again for that breath, for stabilizing, for something that might be less easy to control, and doing your best to let the eyes track, kind of create a loose mirror image, seeing the little bumps and wobbles, seeing the deflections and convergence. An exact replica does not need to happen, since whatever it's reflecting upon may not be perfectly smooth. And we'll work a little back and forth, layering some contours, maybe introducing new deviations, wobbles, things to track our eye along. Giving ourselves a few moments for a breath in between, to prepare for the different mode of motion, to prepare the eyes to track and the hand to follow. And then beginning again, being sure that that breath comes out. We don't get overly anticipatory. Maybe slowing the pace around major changes. And those left-hand or offhand drawings can wake up the mind, but also take a little out of the control and the muscles and the attention. So always feel free to center with a new breath before beginning again on the next pass and journey. Lines do not have to contour as I'm doing here, but I think that's what I'll track with. They can also intersect or overlap, each one its own little movement through here. Resetting at the end with a good breath to re-engage the paper, re-engage the eyes. That skill of the attention, seeing two places at once, perhaps. Seeing the line that was before, tracking along it, and also guiding the hand that moves now, tracking its new curve. Vision broadening, opening of the mind, starting there with the breath. Flowing out through the movement of the pen or pencil. Then completing another cycle of centering, preparing us for the tracking, the challenge of something less common, something a little less stable, perhaps. Moving left to right, right to left, gradually expanding this reflection from some arbitrary center. Breathing in to begin, following the flow of that breath out. The primary hand has been the initiator so far, giving shape to the page. Freer, a little easier to move with it, reflecting on that more automatic situation as we're used to acting with that hand, perhaps. But we can switch that up even, let the offhand become the initiator, the driver of form and space. Whichever feels comfortable to you, feel free to keep the primary hand making the shape. I think I'm going to switch over and just do one round where the reflection comes first, free to explore a little on its own. Feeling more comfortable with that hand that's less controlled, less adept at the movement of the pen from daily practice. And then using the primary to track along a curve, finding new position. Moving the eye and the hand together but opposite. A unique and challenging experience for the mind. We'll make a few more passes, perhaps some that get more expansive, reach out further into the space. Bridge and deviate more from a center. Let the hands move a little more freely in the initial expression. But do you begin to notice if you've changed primary direction to the secondary hand? Does it move more freely, more open? Can we accept the wobbles a little bit more? Fold them into a space of nearing reflection. And as we may be reaching out and engaging with the limits of our canvas, boundaries of the page, the two sides begin to adapt not only to our movement of the hand, our presence, but also now to how they compress or extend towards that boundary. As we get further from the center, it may get more difficult to track with the eyes at both places. And that may mean that we're reaching towards the conclusion of this phase to the exercise. I may try one more, but if your space has tightened up and it becomes hard to draw at the edges, you can always add an intermediary line, something in the spaces between now, bringing density internally. And tracking this final edge smoothing out of the boundary condition, a completion of a figure mapped through its reflection. The mirroring condition taking over the space of the page. And now we've brought ourselves to where we have a canvas, a place we can explore the lines and space in between, perhaps, and layering more lines, adding density in some areas, perhaps coming in and just adding a little bit of texture between some of the boundaries. A little stretching out of one line towards the other, an accentuation of shape extending into the space or closing the gap. Finding some place in the drawing to play a little bit. And again, add another layer to similarity and difference in that reflected state. Whatever happens above can reflect down to the below. You can continue flipping hands if you would like, or stick with one if it's gotten a little fatigued. Some of the finer movements are much more challenging with my offhand. It may feel less exploratory. We've gone through the practice, the awakening of both sides of the brain, both sides of the nervous system, flushing out some of the routine or engagement every day through a primary and secondary sidedness, opening up to what may flow out now from an awakened state of the mind. And both hands can take advantage of that. Both hands ignited and guided in their exploration by the activity of the focused mind, tracking curves, playing with edges, building precision through an openness. And if you found a technique for exploring the in-between, the depth, layering, expansion, here on the page, we'll take a few minutes to just draw quietly, seeing where that might go, what new reflections might bubble to the surface, and what you might want to explore in that image you have developing on the page in front of you. As we operate on different parts of the drawing, closer into that line or curve of reflection, or further out, or just somewhere on the left, somewhere on the right, somewhere near the middle, somewhere around the edge, we can explore different things. One exploration above, same but different exploration below, an experiment multiple times in a slightly different context and orientation, feeling out how our eyes and hand work together in this thickening landscape of the page. Some things we may begin to notice enhance or reinforce the reflection, others undermine or subdue it. Our minds pattern matching, noticing similarities, finding odd discrepancies, doing its job there behind the scene, looking out for what's here, what should be here, what seems out of place. Another training to recognize and be present with those things we may not have that much control of, the automatic, the brain behind the brain, working away to keep us engaged with our environment, to keep an awareness even when we may lose it in our conscious self. No need for control there, but a listening in, a maintaining a connection. So perhaps in our conscious presence, we can take cues from it, guidance, and also recognize when it may be serving a different purpose than the present context. That quieting of the connection between minds, a part of the practice of mindfulness, ability to listen to the many voices, observe, sensations and impulses, and perhaps choose with more conscious action how we respond to them internally. Just a few minutes left. The page probably beginning to become more densely populated with these reflected layering contours, reflected strokes, extensions of ink or graphite, letting the eyes come back into our tool of observation if they've become hyper-focused on the tool of guidance, keeping the pen, the pencil in precise contact with the page, helping us move along, struggling when we put it into an awkward situation of drawing with that other hand in another direction, whatever it may be. And just taking a couple minutes to observe what you've made, to decide if there's any places of interface you'd like to continue to work into the drawing, or if perhaps it's reached a point where we can let it be the reflection of the practice that we've worked through, itself an artifact of expression, of letting out some of our breath, letting out some tension onto the paper, an expression of our own internal giving to some practice, to opening the mind, and perhaps developing some technique and a possibility for future exploration. I'm going to end with just a couple of deep breaths with the eyes closed. Let them rest for a moment. Perhaps bring the hands into a state of rest by giving them just a little flex, soft pulsing, open and close, and then letting them sit Let the shoulders sit heavy. Then breathe in to lift everything, expanding up and down, left and right, forward and back, and then relaxing it. Noticing where things sink together, where they might hold on still from just being in a position for a while, and repeating the cycle. Expanding and lifting, releasing and relaxing. And when you're ready, reopening the eyes, looking off into the distance first, letting them practice their focus, and then perhaps bringing them down to again observe what you made, see some reflection in that space, and then come back into your room, your space, to be ready for the rest of the day. Like the grain of wood cut along the rings of the tree towards the outside, ever expanding from some place of convergence, or that reflection in a pond or over the ice on a clear day. We find figure, recognition, something in the near symmetry, perhaps similar to ourselves, always seeing two sides, recognized as the same, but slightly different. And can you take from that simple act of drawing, of connecting with the breath in the body, of meditating on a space of reflection, to look internally, to look at our many sides, two here on the paper, or many in the depth of our own psyche and personality, bring them together. As many voices become one, listening, observing them all with the higher mind, that mindfulness and awareness, and using them as guidance, as inputs to how we engage the world. If you enjoyed the exercise, please give it a thumbs up below, leave me a comment, and let me know what you found in your own reflection meditation there through the act of drawing. I'd appreciate if you share it with your friends, bring more people to this creativity practice, this way of engaging mindfulness through action and through the stillness of a page, the blankness becoming something new. We'll have new episodes usually every Wednesday, so check back here and subscribe if you enjoy the channel. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. Draw well. Thank you.